Sefer Shmot, Parshat Vayakhel. Parshat Vayakhel is the second to last of the weekly Torah readings in Exodus. Sometimes it's paired with the following Parsha, Pekudei. Spanning from Exodus 35, verses 1 through 38, 20, Parshat Vayakhel is primarily concerned with the building of the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Moses calls upon the people of Israel to gift the building materials for the tabernacle's construction. Take from among you gifts to God. Everyone whose heart is so moved shall bring them gifts for God. Collectively, the people raise gold, silver, copper, fine textiles, acacia wood, oil, incense, and precious stones. This is a moment when Bnei Yisrael are charged to act as a collective by giving their individual wealth over to a centralized source of power, which is literalized in the form of the Mishkan. Such a move invites us to think about the tension between centralization and decentralization, not only in this parsha, but in our lives, both as Jews and political subjects. The story of Jewish peoplehood includes periods of both centralization and decentralization. The Mishkan built in this week's parsha is a precursor for the Beit, the temple in Jerusalem. A symbol both of Jewish unity and Jewish political autonomy, the temple functionally replaced the private altars that the people of Israel had worshipped previously. We know that historically, Jews did have private altars. Before settling in the land of Israel, as we wandered from place to place, we still needed a way to serve God. While it was standing, the temple replaced individual family altars, providing one centralized place of worship. However, for 2,000 years, since the Romans destroyed the temple in 70 CE, we as Jews lived in a state of radical decentralization, with no temple, and for the majority of those 2,000 years, no nation state of Israel. Of course, we did not revert back to the altars of our forefathers, but instead, each community has had its own synagogue, which became the nexus of religious life in that place, from Poland to Spain, from Iran to Uzbekistan. A return to true centralization, with all Jews living once again in Israel and the prophetic ideal of the Third Temple realized, is at this point purely hypothetical. For a long time now, decentralization has been our Jewish reality. We call this the galut, the diaspora. Decentralization, of course, has its risks and challenges. How do you keep people connected when they are so spread out? How do you serve God with unity and establish leadership? How do you maintain a coherent calendar? But decentralization also has its benefits. The lack of a single central authority means it's less hierarchical and controlled. The spreading out of Jews all over enables us to have a bigger global influence. Not only does it allow us to have a positive influence on the world, it also allows the world to have a positive influence on us. Today, of course, there are many Jews who think life in the diaspora is purely tragic, that Jews who have not made Aliyah are living on the sidelines to the playing fields of true Jewish life in Israel. Everyone, they insist, should come back home. But there's others who celebrate the Jewish diversity cultivated within the diaspora. They see the vibrance of Jewish life all over the world as something to celebrate. So here we are, caught between centralization and decentralization. The truth is, we need a healthy balance of both. We need to remain a cohesive people while also celebrating difference. We need communal centers to bring us together just as much as we need to keep cultivating life outside of the establishments. An especially striking moment of this parsha happens when the campaign to collect materials is successful. So successful that the artisans tell Moses, the people are bringing more than what is needed for the tasks entailed in the work that God has commanded to be done. Wow. In this moment, Moshe could easily keep accepting contributions to build up the wealth of the new religious authority. However, this is not what Moses does. He does not require the people of Israel to forgo all personal wealth for the sake of centralized power. Instead, he proclaims, let no man or woman make further effort toward gifts for the sanctuary. And so the Torah tells us the people stopped bringing. How refreshing, how unique. Can you imagine hearing that today? a rabbi saying to their congregants, the building campaign has enough money, don't give anymore. This parsha is a beautiful example of how centralization and decentralization can coexist. We can also see such a tension playing out in our secular political lives. One of the great ideological debates between Democrats and Republicans has to do with the strength of the federal government. In our time, the Democratic Party has generally supported a strong centralized federal government. Conversely, the Republican Party has largely supported centralization, meaning a weak federal government in favor of more states' rights. If we were to see both sides for their most noble values, that would be social welfare on the Democratic side, meaning believing that the government must be able to protect its most vulnerable citizens. And on the Republican side, that would be liberty for individual states, as well as corporations operating without regulation. American democracy flourishes when these two sides can coexist, debate, and negotiate with each other. Similarly, in our religious lives, we can aspire to a healthy balance between centralization and decentralization. The danger comes when religion is politicized and controlled by a powerful minority. Take, for example, Israel's central religious authority, the Rabbanut, meaning the chief rabbinate of Israel. Many in and out of Israel feel that the chief rabbinate isn't particularly concerned with the majority of the people, but rather with consolidating their own religious power. In fact, a recent poll in Israel concluded that less than a third of Jewish Israelis trust the chief rabbinate at all. A, quote, coercive power center, one journalist recently called them. For many Jews, the rabbinate represents failure centralization. On the other hand, it's not hard to imagine more responsible rabbinic establishments. In the past, there were chief rabbis of Israel who held their power with the good of the majority in mind. Rav Kook, for example, the first Ashkenazic chief rabbi of Eretz Yisrael, believed that Israel could become a source of illumination that would heal the entire world. For other examples of centralization that does not disenfranchise the people, we might also look at the infrastructure of the various American Jewish denominations, the Orthodox Union, Union for Reform Judaism. These can be helpful centers that hold community together without holding significant political power. The Mishkan being built in our Parsha offers us a model of balance between centralization and decentralization. After all, it may be a central source of religious authority, but it travels, it moves. Often we think of authority as fixed. The temple in Jerusalem is certainly a fixed point, but when it comes to the tabernacle, the Mishkan, the center is a moving center. We can learn from this, the adaptability and flexibility when it comes to centralized authority. And we might ask ourselves, on what will we center our own lives? God, Torah, our families, our most cherished values, human rights, economic justice, climate activism. As Bnei Yisrael build a resplendent Mishkan in this Parsha, so should we build our centers beautifully, adorned with our greatest values. And as they build a moving Mishkan, so may we also build our centers with flexibility, able to be in conversation and collaboration with the people who have centers often different from our own. Shabbat Shalom.